there that are a lot more. They hear less things farther away. I don't know if that's really true, but
that's not a condenser, is it?
I have absolutely no idea. I don't know anything about the details of microphones.
I know that the one that I have works pretty good for what I need. That's about it. Although I did have the condenser with phantom power, and that's what I tried starting the podcast
and
with.
It was just...
And it had that hiss constantly. Yeah.
Did you say that you thought it was because of the phantom power that I was doing that?
Yeah, could have been.
Like maybe it's an issue with the
mixer itself.
With the mixer, yeah.
Hey, we're still here, guys. Sorry. Have you tested it so that two people are talking at the same time at the same microphone? How well it records? How close I need to be able to...
This is my first opportunity to have both of us on the same mic, on the same...
Right, which is why I'm saying that we should probably, see how close you have to be to the microphone to talk. How close are you usually?
I got mic gain and adjustments here. How we sound, guys?
You sound good on our end.
Yeah, it's good.
Right. Both of us? It's not weird?
Nope.
Okay.
Other than the sound of our natural voices being weird.
Yeah. Well, the sound quality was pretty good last time we did it, except Robert obviously was on the phone.
Yeah.
But, I blame him for that. Usually, though, surprisingly, when I'm doing editing, he sounds better than I do.
Oh, really?
Makes me mad. But I've got a lot of sound foam panels and stuff that I still need to put up in my office that I have not yet done.
Yeah. We were just talking before we called you about my fantasies about having a home office and like the Joe Rogan setup where he has that big table with all those nice swinging mics and the monitors and stuff. Yeah, that'd be nice.
If only.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I got a shipping container office, and so there's a whole bunch of audio problems with being in a metal box with flat walls.
Oh, I bet. Wow.
Yeah. That's pretty cool, though. Okay, so should we just dive into the interview then?
Sure, yeah, we're cool with that. Right?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Well, if I could have just an idea of what's going to take place. I mean, is this just going to be a straight question and answer session, or what are we really discussing here?
Oh, yeah, sorry. So we were just I wanted to talk about, Larken Rose and your guys' experience there. And then whatever, just generally themed around like how to talk to statists kind of thing, if you're comfortable doing that.
Yeah, there's a bunch of different strategies, or not strategies, but tacks you could take. They all follow a similar bent. But yeah, I think we could talk about that.
Sure, if that's cool. I was going to shoot for around 30 to 45 minutes, and whatever else you guys wanted to talk about, wherever the conversation takes us is fine.
Okay. Well, what have you guys been doing lately?
School's starting here, so I've been running around with my head cut off trying to figure out, how to set everything up. But
yeah, for me, work is starting to get busy because I do all this holiday stuff. But I'm playing a lot of D&D. Honestly, that's what I've been doing lately.
We had a session last.
Oh yeah. What do you got? Like a level 4 rogue or something?
So we don't play D&D. We play Savage Worlds, and I guess I don't know if you want to. You can describe what your character's like.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, I'm a human smuggler. I abide by the NAP. It's pretty cool, and I'm a political dissident, and I'm a woman with nice tits. So
important.
So is that like lawful good?
I don't know. Not lawful good.
There's no. I mean, it depends on. There's different interpretations of the lawful spectrum in D&D, and some people interpret it as having a code, and some people determine it as if people are obeying like the authority or not, because you can look at a character like Rorschach, and he's either lawful neutral or chaotic neutral, depending on how you define it. But I think most people would consider you chaotic good or chaotic neutral. I don't know.
I detest royalty because I was raised as like a royal concubine. So, yeah, or the daughter of a royal concubine.
Yeah.
So do you think that this is where a lot of the self-identifying comes from? It's from people playing D&D with their 20-sided die, assuming a character and identity and a backstory, and then just taking it out into the real world in sort of a LARPing gone wild? So you identify as a big-titted concubine?
That's pretty deep.
I mean, I've played quite a bit, and the first two characters I played were definitely just exaggerations of my personality. And then past that, I've started doing different things. Like I played like a religious zealot and like bigot for a while, and right now the person.
Wait. Let me stop you right there.
Yeah.
In current news, that'd be anyone who's not in Antifa or Black Lives Matter, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's what and then right now I'm playing in a Star Wars game, and we're basically like a bunch of smugglers and scum, and I'm playing a battle droid who's just dumb as rocks, and so I just shoot things, and I like have like a real sense of wanderlust and novelty, but I'm just really dumb. And that's what I'm doing right now. And then the next character I want to play is basically going to be Mugen from Samurai Champloo.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so I've gotten to the point where I'm playing different personalities. Like the last time I played this battle droid, we went to a casino, and I was like, damn it, me as the player doesn't want to gamble because I legitimately need this money, but my character absolutely would gamble. And like, okay, well, I'm going to lose a bunch of money today. Like, yeah.
Well, it's interesting that one of your characters is an NAP follower, and yet you're sort of like you're not declaring that you're necessarily any alignment, right?
Yeah, not necessarily.
In the system that we're using, there isn't really an alignment declaration thing, and I'm the GM of this game that Pat is playing in, and I'm going to be pushing his morals as much as I can. I'm looking forward to it.
So does your character believe that she is above the law then?
Oh yeah, because so her backstory is that
right now she's trying to find hemlock.
Yeah,
she's just like going into places being like, hey, you got any hemlock? And they're like, no, please leave, thanks.
I'm still trying to figure out what this world is right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of talking to Statists, do you guys play this game with Statists? And so this is a way to sort of infiltrate these ideas into the game without them being aware of it?
Yes, and this is something that I thought is that I purposely wanted to avoid trying to proselytize or put my beliefs into the game, because I know that no matter what, it will happen subtly anyway. So I'm deliberately, there is no faction within the world that shares my beliefs at all. The closest faction to it would be kind of like a group that's kind of like Native Americans, if anything. Those would probably be the closest people who to an actual like voluntarist, just because if someone from their tribe goes and steals someone's sheep, and then like someone from this like human kingdom comes over and is like, hey dude, give us back our sheep, they'll be like, hey, don't talk to me, Jeff was the one who did it, go talk to Jeff, we're not responsible for Jeff. But yeah, I've purposely decided that I'm not going to have any ANCAP societies in there, because there's going to be themes of anti-government and are going to be in there. Themes of pro-capitalism are going to be in there just because that's how I understand the world to work.
Cool. And I've never done any DMing, so do you have to like write it all out ahead of time, or a great deal of it? Like, you got like a couple weeks worth of content ready to go?
So it depends. A lot of people that I've played with do pre-made games, which is it definitely makes it a lot easier. They kind of have the world made already, and then there's sort of things going on in it, and then the players do that. I am creating my own world, and I spent a really long time procrastinating and not starting to play, like not starting my game because I was using the excuse that I was like building my game world. But we've actually started playing, and I don't know, I know probably about a week or two in ahead what's going to happen, but there's a saying that like no plan survives contact with the players. So there definitely are things that can happen that will just be like, this work that I did for next week, well, that's completely useless. It's funny looking at people who do pre-generated games, because they'll have like a book in front of them, and it'll be funny. Like you can notice times when it's like, we do this thing, and then the GM will just take like a fourth of the section of the book and then just flip past it, and it's like, yep, we just
fucked everything
we
up.
just screwed this guy over. It's really funny. But ideally, I wouldn't really know what's going to happen. A lot of people say that a lot of GMs say that they have the most fun when they don't expect what the players are going to do, and I hope that I'll be able to get there.
Is this something you've done a lot before?
I've played a lot before. I haven't GM'd a lot. I did in college, and I was like terrible at it in college because I was like super lazy and wasn't actually preparing anything. So I just kind of nothing really happened in like the 8 sessions that I played with some kids in college a couple of years ago. Just because I sort of didn't actually know what was happening myself. I just sort of made stuff up, and some people can do that, but I couldn't. And now we've had 4 sessions over the past like month or so, but I've been a player for quite a bit.
Cool. The reason I bring up that your character feels above the law, Pat's character feels like understands that she's above the law, is in the Larken Rose Candles in the Dark situation, you're actually trying to get the Statists to understand that their morality is superior to the politician's morality, and therefore understanding that they are in fact also above the law.
Oh yeah,
that's a good way to. It's a really good tactic to go with. I like that.
Yeah, I'd add one comment, and that is that your goal isn't to convert the Statist on the spot. Your goal is to get them to do some kind of facial contortion or some kind of a stutter to where they realize, even subconsciously, that they don't have an answer for something. And that will stick in their mind like a splinter in their mind, as Morpheus would say. And they got to deal with that. It could be weeks or months later, but they will eventually have to come to terms with that cognitive dissonance that is elicited by the simple and very specific questions that you ask them.
Right, because these are issues about liberty and philosophy. These are things that we libertarians do all the time. We're constantly analyzing our own actions and other people's actions for NAP violations and if it's logically consistent, that sort of thing. And most people just have this indoctrinated belief in this mythology of statism, and it isn't really founded on anything. They don't have any principles in play. So when you bring up this concept that they've never considered before in a million years, they really don't have any answer for it. All they can do is try and change the subject. So if you can get them to stop and pause and think and go, that's like you win right there. That's your goal, is to get them to just think about it, something they've never thought about before. And then you can just
walk away and just like a walk-off home run. You did it. Because you're never going to convince someone there on the spot in one argument. That just doesn't happen.
Unless you're Rothbard.
Maybe if you're Rothbard, but if you're the average person and you're talking to the average statist, you're just not. I mean, maybe if the statist is like already leaning anarchist and they just need that little push from some argument they haven't heard before, but the average person doesn't even consider this stuff. So to be blindsided with this idea of liberty is something they've never even thought about. And when they're arguing with you or talking with you, they're not just going to instantly switch over. It's like a seed, obviously, and it needs to grow over time. And you're not going to be there when the seed comes to fruition. It'll happen when they're alone and they're thinking about it, and it's stuck in their mind, like that splinter. And yeah, it's one of the main things Larken talks about is just having a goal in mind, an expectation of just getting them to think about this new stuff that they've never thought about before.
Well, with that, should we do the intro and actually start?
Yeah, should we do the... throughout that, you guys were kind of quiet.
Or should we
So
probably
I'm trying to adjust the recording volume.
We probably could turn down our side if that's possible.
Which one of us was louder?
I think Daniel was a little louder, I think.
Well, Robert's right on top of the mic, but I think I'm projecting a bit more. But that's okay. I just cranked up our mic gain a little bit, so if you have any way to view our level, are we clipping at all doing this?
Nope. You're not clipping. You're doing good right now. I think this is a good balance.
Yep.
So why don't we just officially start, and then we can get into that again. Sorry if I wasn't clear about that.
Yeah, that's fine. And just we'll start off with just some general questions about like what you thought was the most interesting, or what was the biggest takeaway from Candles in the Dark.
Yeah.
So
does that sound good? Sorry about that. If you guys were rip-roaring.
No problem. We're ready to do whatever you guys want. So if you want to do a little intro or a little bump, or
yeah, we'll do the bump and then we'll just start where we left off again, or start again. All right. So I'll start now. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Liberty Weekly Podcast. I'm your host, Patrick McFarland, and joining me today, as always, is the co-host, Jerry McCullum.
Thank you, Pat.
All right, everyone. So today we are joined by some very good friends of the podcast, Daniel and Robert. Daniel and Robert are the guys behind the Actual Anarchy Podcast, a show that dissects popular movies from a libertarian anarcho-capitalist perspective in an effort to explain Rothbardian principles to both those unfamiliar with anarcho-capitalism and those who are a little more privy to our ideology. Daniel, Robert, welcome to the show, guys.
Hey, thanks for having us on again.
Hey, guys.
Or the other way around, I guess, this time.
Yeah, good to have you guys on. We appeared on the Actual Anarchy Podcast in episode 35 to talk a little bit about Star Wars Rogue One, but today the guys are joining us on our show, and so we're really excited about that. And the reason for that is that Daniel and Robert just experienced Larken Rose's Candles in the Dark event. So, guys, do you want to talk a little bit about what Candles in the Dark is and who Larken Rose is?
Sure, yeah. So Larken Rose is one of our heroes. He is an anarcho-capitalist.
The original Gene Jacketarian.
The Gene Jacketarian, who wrote several books. One is called The Iron Web, which is like an action-adventure story that intersperses a bunch of libertarian theory into it. And the other is The Most Dangerous Superstition, which is basic concept is breaking down the arguments for authority and the false belief in authority, and in a bit of a repetitive fashion, dismantling each of those arguments one by one until there's nothing left but to be an anarchist.
Okay, and so when you were at this event, was it primarily the focus was how to talk to Statist, correct?
Yeah, definitely. We've all had, I don't know how long you've been a libertarian or an anarchist, but when you get into
these ideas, you're all excited about them, and you just want to share them with people. You're like, I found this truth, and I want everybody else to experience this truth. And so you start out and you go around proselytizing to people, and you immediately get a whole lot of pushback from people who just don't seem very interested in these ideas, and you get confused. You're like, but these are really good. You should listen to them. But you're up against this lifetime of indoctrination and these mythologically held statist beliefs. And this event follows pretty much what Larken's been working on his whole life. It kind of combines the mirror and his book, The Most Dangerous Superstition, into one 2-day event. And it's just strategizing. It's really just strategizing on how to speak to a statist so that they don't just throw their hands up and run away from you. They don't get scared. They don't get into fight mode.
Yeah, so we were talking a bit right before we went on the mic, and then things got weird, or before we were recording. But a lot of what you were saying made me realize that these were like fundamental truths that maybe I didn't realize when I was trying to argue to statists. And I think a lot of people get trapped in that kind of conception that they have to win the argument on the spot and turn the other person into a full-fledged Rothbardian. And can you recap a little bit what you were saying before about planting a splinter in their mind that they might work over later?
Yeah, so one thing that Larken was sure to point out was that you're never going to be present for the conversion. It's something that happens later on while the statist is mulling it over in their mind in the middle of the night, and they've just been hit with these ideas, and they're just trying to reconcile the cognitive dissonance in their own mind. You're never going to be there. You're never going to, if you go into it as you're trying to win an argument as opposed to getting them to think about it, you're doing it wrong. What you want to do is inspire thought. You don't want to get them into a mode where they're trying to defend the state. You want to get them to realize that their morality is superior to any politician's morality. You want to get them to understand that authority backed by force is illegitimate. So if you try and just bludgeon them over the head with these ideas, all you're going to get is them backing away or getting angry or defensive, and they'll just they'll never have to really consider their own morality. They'll never have to consider their own cognitive dissonance. Instead, they'll just be defending the state or trying to explain away and rationalize the state.
Yeah, and some other areas that Larken talked about was you're walking a fine line between getting them to think and getting them to have an escape route to fall into platitudes or into my facts versus your facts, or my expert versus your expert, or my jargon versus your jargon. And so there's a path that he lays out that is good to remember, to break things down into their simplest elements. So rather than calling it taxation, say, what happens if I don't give the money to the politicians? Will men with guns come to my home to get the money?
Or do you advocate guns be brought to my face?
And what if because when I've had these conversations with people, they'd be like, no, like, if you don't pay your taxes, people won't come to your house with guns. Like, so what do you say if they say that, because I've had that situation myself where they've just flat out denied, that fundamental truth.
Yeah, so that's part of them trying to predict the future. You don't want to get into a match where either one of you are trying to out-predict each other on what will happen or what has happened. You want to keep the discussion. You want to hold their feet to the fire on what do you advocate happen in this instance. Because that's where the cognitive dissonance is. You can spend all day arguing about what could or could not happen, if it's going to be Mad Max when there is a government or isn't a government. But where the heart of their contradictions lie in their head is what they advocate happen versus what the state does and what the state advocates happen. And they'll soon realize that their morality is superior to any politician's morality.
So is it really important to focus on just the morality of the person you're arguing with, and not try to deviate from that at all.
Yeah, you really want to hold their feet to the fire on their own moral conscience being superior to any given law. So, for example, in the United States, it used to be law that it was illegal to drink alcohol, or that it was legal to own a slave. And so at that point in time, you get them to admit that, yeah, you're okay if you drink a beer, you're terrible if you own a slave. Okay, so you recognize that your morality is better than a politician's morality at that given time. So would you have disobeyed? And if you would have disobeyed, then you're admitting that your morality trumps government morality. And once you realize that, then you realize that you're above the law, like your characters. Sorry,
Yeah.
That's from before the show.
No, it's okay. We might include it anyways, but yeah, and I think people realize this without realizing it, or they display this without realizing it, is that everyone always has beef with like politics, and they're always like, oh, we should do this instead of this. So I think that, would it be fair to say that everyone has that fundamental morality inside of them that is apparent? You know what I mean?
It just may not be acknowledged by them.
Acknowledged, yeah.
Well, I think humans are adaptable animals, and they'll suit whatever argument will allow them to save face in the predicament that they're confronted with. Because most people really just have empty platitudes and learned behavior, like rote memorization of mythological facts on which they believe they have an understanding of how government works.
And that's not necessarily their fault. I mean, we've been indoctrinated for years and years and decades in public schools.
Yeah, and so the point that you were bringing up earlier, I think it was Patrick, about taxation and then coming to your home with guns, that's exactly why you don't use the word taxation. You use the actions in a very literal and specific sense, but also in a personal way. So you say, do you, my friend who I'm talking to, advocate that if politicians demand money from me and I refuse to give it to them, that they then send other men to my house to come retrieve it and using force?
Yeah, and well, in one of the praises that we had specifically, because we've talked about Larken Rose in the past on the show, about how he's very good at deprogramming his language. So I think, Jerry, you used the term kidnapping instead of arrest. Yeah,
he's very good about being consistent about that. And in Kindles in the Dark, does he put extra stress on that then?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, he says use very specific and very literal language, avoid platitudes, avoid jargon, avoid language of politics, and get to the specific actions by specific individuals.
Yeah, and always keep it personal. Keep it between you and me, and not what other people advocate or what might or might not happen, but what you advocate. What you advocate be done to me or to you. That's one way to get them into it, is to, if they disagree with, say, I don't know, some law where it would actually end up being used against them, would they feel justified in resisting against that law? Daniel, could you...
Yeah, so one of the lines of questioning is, do you believe that it's okay for the government to force you to fund things that you consider immoral or are opposed to?
Okay, yeah. Well, and I see a parallel here, because one thing that we usually talk about, and I think what I've found to be the most effective way to explain voluntarism, is saying that, well, on the individual level, in our own daily lives, we do not violate the non-aggression principle. You know, when we go around, if someone parks us in, say, you know, on the street somewhere, we don't take a baseball bat and bash their window open and push their car out of the way. You know, we try and find out whoever it is, or, you know, if we're trying to, if someone, just in daily life, we don't resort to violence to get what we want. And to try and make someone realize that, I think, I see the parallel here between the messages.
Yeah, so an example of that would be, if it's bad for you to do a certain thing, is it okay for you to go and try to get someone else to do it for you? And an example would be, if you don't have the right to murder your neighbor, is it okay for you to then hire someone else to do it for you?
Yeah, exactly. And to keep it on that hyper-specific level, I think you guys are so right in saying that, then we avoid getting into the high esoteric kind of, economics of it, or because normal people, it's easy for us to forget that normal people are not Rothbardians, and normal people don't read economics, and perhaps when you mention these terms and stuff like that, they'll just shut off right away. And have you guys experienced the shut off moment?
Oh yeah, definitely. They're constantly trying to escape and talk about anything that is going to free them from this level of discomfort that you've placed them in by having them confront this cognitive dissonance. So they will, tap dance and try to get you to predict the future, or, what about the roads, or what about Mad Max, or...
Yeah, or they'll appeal to some other entity, like a constitution or law, just in a very general and vague sense. And rather than focusing on what individual humans are doing with each other, they'll just say, oh, the Constitution is there to protect our liberties, and there's the court system, and there's police to protect us. They'll deflect and delay giving a legitimate response, and they can run circles around that. And so that's why it's very important to use very clear language, use the Socratic method where you're basically asking questions versus making assertions or making statements. Like, you really want to get what they believe at their core on something that they've probably not even thought about.
Yeah, and you want to agree with them at every opportunity because you want to understand that you're on their side. You're not trying to win a debate versus an enemy. You're trying to heal a person that has been diseased, if you want to call it, or infected with this virus of authoritarian belief. So really, not to be too condescending about it, but you really want to take the role of the psychiatrist who's prodding and poking gently at the corners of this statist wall that people have built up around this uncomfortable topic.
And to jump onto that a little bit, most people have good intentions in their mind and justify government taking actions for something that they view as a good or a positive thing. It just so happens that most of the time those very good intentions are, well, the road to hell is paved with them, and the actions taken by government are usually backfiring or self-contradictory or just evil. And so until people are, they view you as being on the same side of recognizing that their intentions are good, and you agree, like, hey, I think it's important to help the poor, or I think it's important to protect people who are victimized. Like, you can agree on those very base levels and then start talking about, okay, what do you personally advocate be done if somebody wants to contribute to that or doesn't, or whatever terms need to be used on a very simple and specific way.
Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, it's really important for you to play the role, like to see yourself as someone who's helping them and not a competitor. And do you have any more advice on how to deal with the situation where you're not trying to you believe that they have good intentions and you're trying to reinforce the fact that you think they have good intentions, but I'm assuming you, at least in my conversations, a lot of times the points that I'm bringing up are trying to show that their good intentions have bad results, and a lot of times people will mistake that for me thinking that they have bad intentions. Is there any other advice for dealing with that situation?
Yeah, I think my response to that would be to think of it as a root versus branch issue. like if you're going to get dragged into, like Robert was saying earlier, predicting the future, or into economics, or what are the consequences of the actions, the seen versus the unseen, if you go Bastiat or Hazlitt, and it's great to know all of these things. But honestly, you don't even need to go that deep. If you just stick to, you identify with their intentions and you agree with them, so you're on the same side, you're saying, yeah, these are important things, then start asking them specifically, if you think that this is a good thing, do you think that people would voluntarily support it, or do you think that people should be forced to do it? And even if they're wrong, what if the shoe was on the other foot? So what if you knew something wasn't going to work, but you were forced to pay for it? Or what do you advocate be done to me if I know that something wouldn't work and I refuse to pay? So, getting back to specific, literal, and personal.
Yeah, it reminds me of a lot of, I believe Stalin said this quote that, a million deaths is a statistic, one death is a tragedy. And I definitely am noticing that it's important to go down to individuals, to get it on a personal level instead of talking about, macroeconomics or political science or things in the in the larger sense of like, oh, we have these many poor people. It's about you and me.
Yeah, because the tendency, these are things that we think about a lot and we know a great deal about, and the average person has no idea about. And so if you start just bringing up these economic truths or Hazlitt or Rothbard or anything like that, people are just going to throw up their hands and be like, either, I have no idea what you're even talking about. Why? So if you keep it personal, keep it specific to that person, and show the contradictions in their own thinking, that's the idea. You don't want to be hacking at the limbs when you could be digging at the root, as Dan was saying.
Yeah, and I think that the specific knowledge about economics and political theory and the NAP and all those things, those are great to know, and they're there for people who get that spark to learn more. Because what will happen is once these people run into that cognitive dissonance and then spend a few weeks or months trying to come to terms with it in their mind, they may approach you and say, hey, it's really interesting, that conversation we had a couple weeks back. Do you have a, recommended reading or whatever? And that's where having that awareness and that familiarity with the literature and the theory and economics behind it really can play a role. Because we've had this theory even before going to this event, and that was, our goal is to spark interest. People can't be preached to be converted. They have to have a specific interest in their own mind that they want to satisfy. They have to have a curiosity that's sparked on their side so that they're the ones seeking the information out.
Right. Not too many people are excited when a Jehovah's Witness knocks on their door.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I feel like I've made that realization too with the podcast. I think maybe not in as frank terms, because I don't really see the Liberty Weekly podcast as being specifically tailored towards the new libertarian or people curious to the ideology. But that's something I really have, learned. And I think that this is so demonstrative in my own liberty journey, because I came to the table as a minarchist, and when I met Jerry, when we lived together in college, it wasn't until 6 months of reading went by after he planted that splinter in my mind that I came back and we reconnected, and at that time I was a full Rothbardian. And so I think this is so, apt and so demonstrative in my own life that it's really, I'm just kind of realizing this whole thing now. Do you remember what Jerry did specifically? Did he kind of follow these ideas and principles, or? Yeah, I think in a certain sense. Do you remember that time? It was a while ago, but it was a long time ago. I think that I was kind of coming down my proselytizing phase at that point, I think, and I just remember being really excited that you were a libertarian, and I think maybe in my head I was thinking like I'm trying to be kind of coy and not be like, oh yeah, minarchist, that's lame, like you're not cool. And I do remember trying to be
for lack of a better term, gentle, or just being like, yeah, these are things that I think, and it's okay that you don't think that, but this is what I'm about.
Well, and at that time I didn't even know the NAP. I knew about Ron Paul and I knew about these things, but I didn't know the fundamentals.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I keep forgetting to bring up on the show, but I recently went back to Yale, my Yale chapter, and I interacted with some of the people the undergraduates there, and I made this realization that these kids are just kids. They don't know what they think yet. They've been exposed to these ideas, but to bust in there and be condescending and be like, yeah, well, I'm a Rothbardian, government shouldn't exist, and if you don't think that, you're an idiot. Well, these kids, they don't know what they want. And I was at that time, and I think the thing that I really appreciated was that when Jerry presented these ideas to me, he did so. It wasn't in like we were facing off against each other. He was like, well, this is the theory. This is the idea. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't really, this is the right idea. It was like, well, this is the idea,
And something similar to that, the other person that I can take responsibility for turning into an ANCAP, my roommate, we enjoy debating quite a bit. We enjoy having arguments, and so we spent a lot of time directly debating these things. And it's a camaraderie thing. It wasn't. It's not something that makes us enemies. And even in a situation where we want to be debating with each other because we enjoy it, there wasn't an argument that was had, and then at the climax of it, he was like, "Okay, I'm an ANCAP now." What happened was, we didn't talk for like a week, and then he was just like, okay, yeah, I think you're right. And I was like, oh, all right, that's fantastic. Like, so even with someone who my tactic was to be argumentative because we wanted to do that and we enjoyed it, even then, this realization did not happen when we were talking to each other. It happened when he was by himself.
Yeah.
It sounds a lot like when Robert and I had our interactions where he came to be an anarchist, and it was me sort of soft-pedaling things as I was discovering different writers and different books and different articles, and I would just forward them to him and be like, hey, what do you think of this? Oh, hey, what do you think of that? And I would do that, I don't know, every couple of weeks maybe, and then before you knew it, we're having long conversations on the phone. And with the Ed Snowden revelations and listening to Alex Jones turn the frogs gay, we figured that the NSA was listening anyway. So we're like, okay, well, if they're going to record the conversation, we might as well record it as well. Maybe we'll convert a few. And that's sort of the genesis for our show from a few years back. We figured we were going to have decent conversations and just turn it into something.
Yeah, that was one thing Dan was really good at, is he never made me feel stupid. All he did really was just kind of feed my curiosity and send me questions or send me materials. Hey, take a look at this. What do you think about this? So that's really important. Yeah, you get uncomfortable when you feel stupid, because this is a really, really simple, when you break it down, it's self-ownership, don't attack people, private property rights. It's stuff that we all know. Not to go hit people. You learn it when you're 2 years old. But through a lifetime of indoctrination, you kind of think that the child world is different from the adult world, and that in the adult world, taxation is fine and wars are inevitable. So yeah, if you can make it so that people feel confident and comfortable as you're discussing these things, then you're gonna get way better results. And it's important, like we said, to have a clear idea of what your goal is. Like we said, you're never going to convert someone in one conversation. All you can do is plant seeds and hope they grow. And as soon as you get someone to think or to stumble and to go, then know when to walk away. Know if that has been your goal. And, maybe they'll come back to you, like you said, in a week and go, now what was that you're talking about? What about this? And then you got them.
Yeah, once you get them off of their sure-footedness you don't want to just pile on because that'll just turn them off. It's sort of like Robert and I have been talking over, the last couple of days with this whole Charlottesville thing, and Antifa is going around punching Nazis, and we're like, well, okay, what does that accomplish? Is the Nazi going to change their mind or be more dogmatic in their belief because somebody who they are disagreeing with is now violently attacking them?
Right.
Sorry. Keep going.
Oh, that was an opportunity for you guys to chime in.
Oh yeah, well I wanted to make the comment that I really feel like what we're doing is deprogramming, because I was having this conversation with my wife, and I talk about this quite a bit because I antagonize her over it, and she's a poor suffering soul for this. But I don't see like what we're doing as programming per se. I feel like all the other ideologies, when they want to argue and try and convince people, I feel like what we're doing is more deprogramming. But your thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely. You have to, if you're going to program a people into thinking that they're free while at the same time oppressing them, essentially, you have to get them when they're young, and you just indoctrinate them with this mythology. You don't actually rationalize anybody into any of these statist ideas. Like Larken says in his island analogy, if you take a bunch of people, like a group of people, and you say, okay, we're on an island, and oh no, this one guy, he stole a fish. What should we do? There's no cops to call. There's no bureaucrat to petition. We have to figure out what we got to do. We're going to be adults in this situation. We got to decide. And everybody comes up with ideas that are way better than any government solution. Nobody says, well, what we got to do is we got to give one guy the right to steal from all of us so that he can violently imprison this guy and then steal more money to buy food to feed this guy in his prison. Nobody comes up with that.
Yeah, that's such a good point. But I had my one situation here is, like, what happens when you encounter that one person who is just confronts these fundamental truths, and they're like, yeah, that's necessary. We got to bash them over the head, or we need to do this because it will descend in chaos, and we need to do it for the utilitarian good, is to walk around and use the brute force of the law. What do you do then?
Well, there are some people that are just lost causes.
You gotta know when to hold them and know when to fold them.
If you're dealing with a psychopath who doesn't agree that there is any right or wrong, that we're all just nihilists or whatever, then you're probably your time is better spent speaking to someone who actually cares, because you want to get them on what they care about. If they're just completely pragmatic and, well, whatever works, I don't care. As long as they're not killing me, they can do whatever they want. That's like somebody who is just a sociopath, and you're not going to convince that person.
Yeah, and we don't need to convince everybody to get a non-statist world. I mean, what do you need? Something like 20-25% before you start to get that 100th monkey situation where it becomes hip and cool to be anarchist, from the type of anarchist we are, the nonviolent or non-aggressive kind, and then it just sort of becomes the norm. Like, you don't need to go and get everybody to get on board with this thing. You just need to get who you can relate with and who you can spark that interest in. Because if somebody is a nihilist or just a pragmatic utilitarian, they're not going to be persuaded by morality or things happening to them versus not happening to them, or wanting to solve problems for other people. They're kind of ones you got to use the Napoleon Dynamite term, break the wrist and walk away.
And another thing is that you're dealing with the government, especially one thing that came up in the event was the IRS and the severe lack of enforcers that they have, which is great. What was it? I guess that they're 90% bite, or 10% bite and 90% bark. They There simply aren't enough of them, and they don't have the resources to come after all of us. If we even reach, say, 10% of the U.S. population, that's like 32 million people, they would have no chance. So you don't need to get everybody. And like Dan said, there's a tipping point with the culture. If you can get just enough, then it snowballs.
You stop normalizing the violence. And a good video that Larken's got on his YouTube is called The Tiny Dot. And we'll post that as an article on our site, and maybe you guys can put it in the show notes here. But it basically outlines how many people represented by these little dots there are who are the lawmakers and the enforcers and the IRS agents versus everyone else. And you get the sense of the scale of what's really going on.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And I think the point you made earlier about picking your battles is a really good one too. And notice, when something isn't worth pursuing.
Yeah, you're not going to be able to convince everybody. There are actual psychopaths in the world who have been traumatized to the point of not caring about what happens to other people. And you're not a psychiatrist. I'm not a psychiatrist. You can't necessarily fix all those people. But the good news is we don't have to. There are more than enough people who actually care about other people, who care what happens to the world. You can see that because we keep voting for these care-hard Democrats who always want to feed the poor. And of course, we all care about the poor. But the point is that people shouldn't be violently coerced into paying for it.
And do you think that there's a certain age at which people are unreachable? Do you think that's a thing?
That was one of the questions I had, and I was debating with myself as this event was going along.
Yeah.
There are, and you're dealing with more and more indoctrination, right? So it's probably better to get them when they're younger, but I think it has more to do with the person on an individual basis. I mean, we were there at this event, and I don't know, we didn't get everybody's sense on when they became an anarchist, but there were people of all ages there, and I can't imagine that somebody who's like 70 now has been an anarchist for like 50 years. I mean, who converted them 50 years ago? I can't imagine anybody.
Maybe they ran into a Rothbard book.
Maybe. It's possible, but it's just, I think it's a little bit harder. But the underlying strategy, I think, is the same no matter who you're dealing with. I think it's more important that, just that they care about something. If they care about something, I think you got them, as long as you do it right.
Yeah. Yeah, well, so in closing here, I'm going to talk a little bit about and do some advertising maybe for this event. The next event, Larken Rose's next Candles in the Dark event is September 23rd to 24th, and it's taking place in Denver, Colorado at the Independence Institute. And so I'm going to put a link to the show notes page for that upcoming event, as well as those videos that you guys mentioned. But as we're closing up here, I just wanted to say thank you to you guys for joining us on the Liberty Weekly podcast. I know we'll probably, do another show in the future, a crossover show, and it's been great getting to know you guys in the last few months.
Is there anything that you want to plug?
Yeah, just that we run and operate actualanarchy.com, readrothbard.com, and theconquestofbread.com. We do our show. It publishes every Sunday. You guys were on the recent episode over Star Wars Rogue One, and that's at actualanarchy.com/35. We're just keep on keeping on. We think that our show is another way to kind of engage people in a sort of a backdoor approach where they might be familiar with the movie, and then we can throw in some different ways to think about different scenes or different actions and maybe get a few conversions that way to spark that interest.
Yeah, I know for sure that I started watching movies differently, way differently, when I became an ANCAP from the way I used to look at movies. Going back and rewatching old movies has been a interesting experience for sure.
Yeah, it's ruined a few of them.
Definitely.
So I actually, we really like the work that you guys do. Obviously, we're friends and stuff, but you guys, do you want to talk a little bit about what Read Rothbard is? because I've been a little curious too, and I think it's a great resource for our listeners to have.
Yeah, Read Rothbard is essentially a response to wanting to find lectures and articles by Rothbard, but making it easier to find. So a lot of it's on the Mises site, but they have so much other content on there that you really have to dig through their search menus to find all of it. And our goal was to put, all the lectures, all the audio that we could find as YouTube videos and as separate posts on the readrothbard.com site. We've got links to all of his books, several articles, but we've kind of been moving a lot of the articles over to actualanarchy.com because that's sort of our ongoing, more journalistic type approach that also happens to have the show. We've got almost 1,000 articles on that site now. Many of them Rothbard, but we've got probably 24 different writers writing for us. Getting a fair amount of traffic on that, which is nice. But Read Rothbard is basically your one-stop shop for all things Rothbard, and Actual Anarchy naturally extends from that. Like if people want to know more or see it in practical action or in movies. And what else is there to say about that?
Well, just to be plain, I mean, if nobody's ever heard of Rothbard before, he was a student of Mises, and he was one of the guys that just carried on the torch of Austrian economics throughout the 20th century. And we lost him before his time, but there is a huge body of work that he put forth all about everything from the destruction of the state to some things that maybe people don't agree with, but I think he's an amazing man who lately he's taken some fire for his not accomplishing much, which is bizarre for the amount of work that he did, and because he was more of a big boat kind of a guy. Like he would work with anybody if it meant advancing liberty.
Yeah, I mean, all the ANCAPs in the world fit in his living room back in the day.
Yeah.
So
Exactly. Yeah, that is a bizarre criticism that we've heard, and actually I do in the future I have planned kind of a Rothbard bio episode. I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver, but that's something I've been entertaining. I think maybe the podcasting sphere needs something like that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
But yeah. Well, I'd be the change you want to see in the world, I guess. But I keep failing to mention that our show notes is anyone listening, because I think iTunes doesn't hyperlink the show notes. And so anyone listening right now can access the show notes page where we have everything that we've discussed in this episode at libertyweekly.net/26. And we would definitely urge you to help support our friends at Actual Anarchy by navigating to their tip jar page, which is at www.actualanarchy.com/tip jar. And we'd really appreciate that. So, in closing, any other final words, guys?
just we appreciate the work that you guys are doing as well on your side, so keep on keeping on. And we appreciate being on your show, and we look forward to having you on with us again.
Yep, sounds good. And the same. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that went pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were worried. We didn't know if we were going to have any coherent thoughts. So.
Oh, no, you guys sounded great. I think this is going to be a real good episode, for people to, because this is like the number one thing that people deal with, is trying to talk to people.
Yeah, and it's frustrating because it's, it's obviously very important in our lives and what we believe, and you want to share that information to people and say, hey, this is the truth. This is something that'll improve your life. Why aren't you interested?
No, to be fair, you've said many times I've ruined your life as a result of this.
Only because there's so few of us. It's like I was already in the minority, and now I'm in the super, super tiny minority. It feels a little bit lonely. That's all.
Yeah. So what do you guys think about the Tom Woods, Jeff Deist, Nick Sarwark shit that's going on right now?
Yeah, what is I
we were away at the event. We kind of missed some of the information or what's been going down. I know there's a tiff between them, but what exactly happened?
Big Twitter beef. I guess Nick Sarwark tweeted out at Tom Woods and accused him of stuff. I'm not sure, but it devolved into this like petty Twitter
name calling sort of thing. It seems.
Oh, was it the in response? Was he responding to Woods's what I learned from Rothbard speech?
Yes, exactly.
And Sarwark was like, "Yeah, learned that the worst strategy ever," something like that.
Yeah, or some shit like that.
And then brought up the blend soil nonsense.
Yeah. So we I don't know if this was a good or a bad move, but we did an episode on Jeff Dice's speech, and we haven't had many downloads since then. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if it's because just what the time of year or something like that, and people have stuck with us, but I don't know if there's a correlation there.
Was it too inside baseball for your audience?
I don't know. I have no idea.
That's certainly possible. I mean, or maybe we didn't sell it right, because the first half of the show we talked about thick and thin libertarianism, and then the last half was talking about the blood and soil speech and that sort of thing. So I don't know if maybe it was people are clicking on and be like, I want to hear about Jeff Dice, and then it was like, oh wait, they're talking about thick and thin libertarianism.
Yeah. We tread super duper lightly though. I mean, we came down in favor of, Jeff Dice, but we were very careful to be like...
Or I guess I would maybe even not that, just maybe not in favor of Jeff Dice, but against people calling him, like, strawmanning him, basically. Because that's what we saw quite a bit of, was there's a lot of people saying, like, this is what his speech said. And it's like, no, that actually was not what his speech said.
Yeah, from my understanding, he was just saying that certain things are important to people in general who may not be familiar with libertarianism, and libertarians run the risk of making an error by ignoring that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but nope. Now he's with how do they phrase it?
White supremacy.
Dog whistling Nazis.
To Nazis. Yeah.
I thought the takeaway from his speech was that people don't fight for abstractions. They fight for kith and kin, and they fight for their community and their property. And I thought it's very... I came down in favor of him because I think he's totally correct, in that saying that. But
yeah, you got to make it real and hit them where they live. You can't just be talking about some high-minded concept that nobody gives a shit about. I think he was totally right. And for these other libertarians to just take this one phrase he used and say, and therefore extract that the entire speech was about that, what the hell are you even talking about?
Yeah. Oh, it's frustrating.
I don't know. This is a bit of an optimistic take on it. So maybe it isn't as bad as it appears to us, but for sure, even any publication, they get attention, they get clicks from controversy, and so they do have an incentive to make a controversy out of this. And there may be, the majority of people may be like us, where we're just like, guys, what are you doing? Come on. Which, I have no way to prove that, but that's something that I hope.
Mm-hmm.
I barely knew who Steve Horowitz was before the blood and soil thing. I'd heard the name, but now I know a lot more about him, and he's terrible.
But yeah, it wouldn't.
Sarwark, I didn't know who he was until 2 days ago.
It doesn't entice me to want to listen to what else he has to say.
Yeah. If anything, it's a turnoff.
Yeah.
If anything,
he's an idiot.
Tom was able to get a shitload of money from this too, in terms of So I don't know if you knew this, Jay.
No, not at all.
So he said that every time the LP attacks me, I'm going to ask people to donate to the Mises Institute. And since he's done that, he's raised a shitload of money for the Mises Institute. I know.
Nice.
And he's paraded that about in front of Nick Sarwark's face. And this Nick Sarwark guy he's just obviously outmatched on Twitter. I'm biased, but I think it's been quite comical.
Yeah, and wasn't he the one guy who was writing about something in Michigan, property rights not being a legitimate thing, or maybe taxation's okay? I'm sort of loosely associating him with some really terrible articles that may have been written a few months back.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all. Well, we can let you guys go, but we really appreciate you guys joining us on our show.
Yeah, we had a fun time.
Yeah, well, thanks again for having us on, and we look forward to having you guys on again, like I was saying. And if you don't mind, since I've got the recording of this on my end, would it be okay with you if I made it available to our Patreon supporters, maybe like after you guys published your version?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, feel free.
Okay.
I think
it would include all the inside baseball and all of this part, too.
Yeah, that's fine. One thing I wanted to ask, you might have to shoot me your audio because there was some clipping and there was like some parts are quiet and I don't know if I'll be able to do some magic, but it's not a big deal. But if you just want to shoot it towards me.
Yeah, I can do that. No problem.
I'm not looking at the waves, but monitoring it, things seemed fine to me.
Yeah, monitoring it, but it's partly because of me too.
Oh, okay.
It's fine. We'll figure it out.
Well, yeah, we probably screwed it up. I mean, this is our first time trying this, so
fucking assholes.
Don't worry. We'll figure it out. But yeah, so thanks a lot. Should we plan on doing Napoleon Dynamite next time we're on, whenever that is?
Yeah, unless there's a movie you'd prefer. I know the Napoleon link was because the chicken farm was in your family, so I thought that was cool. But no one else is going to care about that. So
yeah.
Yeah, when Dan suggested that to me, I was like, really? I don't even what? Well, Napoleon Dynamite, like a comedy. He's chatting with babes. There's the guy that wants to throw a football over a mountain. He's feeding the alpaca or whatever, llama. Tina, yeah. I just didn't see a whole lot other than the school election maybe. But then there's the Napoleon getting paid at the chicken farm.
That's true. I was like, what the fuck are we going to talk about?
We've turned less into more. Seriously, we've done Sharknado and Dumb and Dumber.
That's true, yeah. And so that city, Franklin, Idaho, is the city it takes place in, and that high school is where my wife's dad went to school. Like, Franklin is where he grew up. And I've been there they have the famous Franklin Night Rodeo, and I've been there. So it's fun.
Is it actually filmed in Franklin, Idaho?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And in Cache Valley, which is where my wife grew up. So
wow.
That's funny.
Have you been there since they filmed it? So, like, do they celebrate that, or is it just something everybody knows?
I have been there since they filmed it. I assume everyone knows, but I didn't spend a whole lot of time talking with people from Franklin.
Right.
Would they be proud or would they be ashamed?
It's not as bumblefuck as you would think. I mean, it is kind of bumbly, but it's not. I don't know. I'm kind of biased. I'm a little immune to the bumbly. Middle of nowhere kind of stuff, but it's whatever.
Yeah, well, I think there's enough there to talk about. You got the whole vote for Pedro thing, and
yeah, I'm sure there is. Yeah, I didn't spend a whole lot of time thinking about it.
Yeah, I actually haven't seen it, so I remember the craze happening and being like, what's this thing? What everyone's talking about?
Well, then you're out of your element, Donnie.
Sorry.
But yeah, it'd be fun to. I do want to watch it and try to dissect it. I think I'm interested in doing Napoleon Dynamite.
And we connected with we're gonna poach your guest Shaheen that you had from Australia.
Oh, he's so awesome.
Yeah, India.
Shaheen.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, from Australia. You're right.
I was gonna say shit. Did I? No, but I guess
Jameen's India.
Jameen and Shaheen. Okay, I'm getting these two mixed.
Yeah, so we're going to poach him with your permission, but he's going to talk about how shitty Australian campuses are in terms of the SJW stuff. So,
he'd be perfect for that.
Yeah,
he was telling us all about it. He's written one article for us so far, and I know he's got a few more in him, but yeah, he's at school in Australia, and he was telling us about the posters that are up all over the place, basically shaming people for being men.
Oh, yeah.
And just terrible, terrible stuff. And he's got the added bonus of being born in Iran.
Yeah.
And wow. Interesting stuff there. And he's super funny. He's a good guy.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to having him on the show. I think because we wanted to limit interviews on the show to people with like different perspectives as opposed to just having people on for the sake of having them on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's the opposite of us. I mean, it's what we want to do, but,
No, you guys have, well, we wanted you on the show especially because of, the Larken Rose situation. But, you guys are pretty cool, I guess, too, so.
Shucks.
Okay.
Well, hey, so let us know when the Shaheen thing is, because we'll want to maybe coordinate with him so he can maybe plug his next appearance with us. He's going to do Dark Knight Rises with us, or
I think that's what we were going to do.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. We'll do that. He said to give him like 3 or 4 weeks because he's busy with school too. So.
Okay. Yeah, that would be perfect.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if you guys know Mike Tilden of Battle for Liberty, but he's a good guy. We've been on his show once before, and we're going to be talking the Larkin stuff with him probably next week. And
okay.
Then he'll be a guest of ours doing the Russell Crowe version of Robin Hood.
And he's also a former policeman, so if you ever have want any perspective on that, he's a good guy on for that.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
Yeah, well, I've been trying to coordinate with him, but it's like, a comment and then I'll forget about it or, something like that, but we'll figure it out. I've been meaning to get connect with him about that, so. Yeah.
He's a good dude.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that you guys were available to do this today because things are about to get busier. So.
Ooh.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
So when will this one come out? Because I just want to make sure I coordinate
the Patreon stuff,
posting stuff with.
It'll be on Thursday, tomorrow.
Oh, that's quick. Okay.
Right.
I kind of wish we'd plugged our next show, which we're recording tomorrow.
Well, do you want?
You can do a soundbite right now, and we could probably stick it in.
Hey, check us out on the next episode of Actual Anarchy. We'll be talking 310 to Yuma
with the professional asshole, and that'll be at actualanarchy.com/37. Coming out this Sunday. Sunday. That's bingo.
That sounds great. I'll put this in the intro audio.
All right.
Okay. Yeah, all right. Well, we still have an episode yet to record here, so we're going to let you go.
All right, guys. Good talking to you.
All right. Thanks again, guys.
Yep.
All right, peace out.